introduction of the new Babylock Evolve serger, serging has been made easier and more complete than ever before. The Evolve serger can be used as an overlock, chain stitch, and cover stitch machine, or incorporate all 8 threads for a strong, stretchable, durable, and decorative seam. Babylock invented the very first serger for home use, and now we have evolved the technology, giving you the ultimate serging experience. Thank you for purchasing the Babylock Evolve serger. Use this video in conjunction with your instruction book and the threading chart. I know you'll enjoy watching this video and seeing all the inspiring samples that have been created on the Evolve serger.
Let's begin with the basic operation of the Babylock Evolve serger and identify the function of each of the 8 threads. The Evolve serger uses 1 or 2 needles in the overlock position and 1 or 2 loopers to form an overlock stitch. Use 1, 2, or 3 chain cover needles and 1 looper for a chain or cover stitch. Uniquely independent of each other, you can use any of the overlock or chain cover stitches separately or in combination. When overlocking, fabric is placed in front of the presser foot and reaches the feed dogs first. The feed dogs move the fabric along as the cutting blades trim the fabric edge, creating a clean, finished edge. The overlock stitches form around metal prongs called stitch fingers located on the needle plate. The prongs keep stitches flat and prevent curling of the fabric edge. The threads become locked over the edge of the fabric, encasing it to prevent raveling. All of this is normally hidden from view by the presser foot, which is removed. The presser foot is an unusually long shape, and when combined with the length of the feed dog teeth, gives the serger its firm, even feeding action. The Evolve adds the convenience of a snap-off presser foot. To snap it back on, place the foot under the shank and lower the presser foot lifter. To release the foot, raise the presser foot and push this lever. It's that easy. When forming a chain stitch, the chain needle catches the chain looper to form a straight stitch on the top of the fabric, and the thread chain loops on the underside. Disengage the blade and insert the sewing table to sew a chain stitch on the fabric. Use 2 or 3 cover stitch needles and the chain looper to form a double or triple row of straight stitching on the top and a loop stitch on the underside of the fabric. Included with the purchase of the Evolve are many helpful accessories conveniently located in this built-in accessory storage here. Lift and swing the lid open to reveal the tray holding the most often used accessories. The remaining accessories are stored in the separate pouch or in the Evolve packing materials. Place the Evolve on a serger sewing table or any level surface that provides ample work area to the left. You may want to place the foot controller in a pedal stay under the table. Plug the power cord into the machine here and then into a wall outlet. The power switch is located above the power cord plug. When the power is turned on, the sewing light above the sewing surface is illuminated. To insert the spool pin extension table, place the pegs into the slots on the back of the main thread spool stand. Push the extension table onto the main thread stand until it snaps into place. Raise the telescopic thread guide to its highest position. Rotate the shaft left and right until each section clicks into a locked position. To install the thread guide extension, Place the plastic support on top of the main telescopic thread guide here. Support the main guide with one hand and snap the extension guide to the back with your thumb and lower it into position. To open the front cover, grasp this tab and pull forward. To open the blade cover, grasp this tab and pull it to the right and rotate it forward. To open the side cover, grasp the cover and pull it to the left. It's important to consider the type of thread you use for serging. All types of thread may be used on your baby lock, but a top quality long fiber polyester or a polyester cotton blend thread is the best choice. Avoid the so-called bargain threads for all your sewing. Many times, skipped stitches and broken threads are the direct result of inferior threads. Cone thread is especially designed for serging since it feeds freely from the top. Regular thread spools can also be used. When using regular thread spools, replace the cone holders with the sponge discs and spool caps from the accessory packet. Place the sponge discs sponge side up and put the spool cap on top of the spool. This forms a smooth edge and lets the thread feed off evenly. When serging with nylon, rayon, or silk threads, place a thread net over the spool and fold the net back on itself. This helps prevent the thread from slipping off the bottom of the spool during sewing. The Evolve is equipped with the exclusive Instant Jet Air threading system for fast and easy threading. There's no need to be concerned about threading sequence. If a single thread breaks or runs out, simply rethread it and keep on serging. Notice that the spool pins, tension discs, thread guides, and threading paths are all color-coded for your convenience. All gold color labels correlate to threading for the chain and cover stitches. All green color labels correlate to threading for overlock stitches. For easy thread placement, each thread spindle is labeled with the correct looper or needle. Raise the presser foot, open the front cover and the blade cover. Push and hold the machine lock button firmly and rotate the hand wheel forward until the bottom snaps into the lock position. The lock button release lever will move to the far left. Set the looper threader selector to L for lower looper threading. Place the thread on the spool pin labeled lower looper. Place the thread end through the telescopic thread guide directly above the spindle. Snap the thread into the guide at the top of the machine, through the groove on the faceplate, and into this guide. Pull about an 18-inch length of thread and insert the thread end into the center thread port about an inch. Push the looper threading lever and the thread jets through the tubular looper, just like magic. Clip the thread about 4 inches from the lower looper eye and leave it hanging loose. Next, set the looper threader selector to U for upper looper threading. Place the thread on the spool pin labeled upper looper. Place the thread end through the telescopic thread guide directly above the spindle. Snap the thread into the guide at the top of the machine, through the groove on the faceplate, and into this guide. Pull an 18-inch length of thread. Place the end of the thread into the left threading port, about 1 inch. Push the looper threading lever and the thread jets through the upper tubular looper. Place the thread under the foot and to the left. Set the looper threader selector to C for the chain looper threading. Set the stitch selector lever to D position for easy threading of the chain loop retention dial. Place the thread on the spool pin labeled chain looper. Place the thread end through the telescopic thread guide directly above the spindle. Insert thread through the guide above the chain loop retention dial from right to left. Bring the thread to the back and under the thread guide, then up and over the tension dial. Put the thread into the guide on the front of the dial, then down to the chain looper threading port. Pull an 18-inch length of thread and insert the thread end into the right threading port about 1 inch. Push the looper threading lever and the thread jets through the tubular looper. Open the side cover to view the chain looper. Use the thread cutter on the side of the machine to trim the thread to the correct 4-inch length from the chain looper eye and leave it hanging loose. Close the side cover. Move the lock button release lever to the right to place the evolve in the unlocked position. Close the covers. Threading the needles is just as easy. Let's begin with the left chain cover needle, C1. With the presser foot raised, place the thread on the chain needle 1 spool pin. Place the thread end through the telescopic thread guide directly above the spindle. Bring the thread down into the far left thread guide and then insert it into the C1 slot until the thread clicks into place. This seats the thread into the tension. Bring the thread behind the front thread guide and around the take-up lever. Insert the thread into the pre-tension on the needle clamp and into the thread guide here. Thread the needle using the handy needle threader found in the accessories. Hold the needle threader with the arrow at the top. Place the thread in the groove, then push and slide it down the groove in the needle. Push the thread into the eye of the needle, pull the loop of the thread to the back, and the needle is threaded. It's that easy. Place the thread on the chain needle 2 spool pin. Place the thread through the telescopic guide directly above the spindle. Bring the thread down into the center thread guide and then insert it into the C2 slot until the thread clicks into place. Bring the thread behind the front thread guide and around the take-up lever. Insert the thread into the pre-tension on the needle clamp and into the thread guide above the needle. Thread the eye of the needle and place the thread under the foot to the left. Now place the thread on the chain needle 3 spool pin. Place the thread end through the telescopic thread guide directly above the spindle. Bring the thread down into the right thread guide and then insert it into the C3 slot until the thread clicks into place. Bring the thread behind the front thread guide, around the take-up lever, and then insert the thread into the pre-tension on the needle clamp and into the thread guide above the needle. Thread the eye of the needle. To illustrate threading the overlock needles, we will begin with the left needle O1. Place the thread on the overlock needle 1 spool pin. Place the thread end through the telescopic thread guide directly above the spindle. Bring the thread down into the thread guide until it clicks into place. Continue through the groove and this guide. Bring it under this guide, up over the take-up lever, and down through this final thread guide. Thread the eye of the needle and place the thread under the foot and to the left. Place the thread on the Overlock Needle 2 spool pin. Place the thread end through the telescopic thread guide directly above the spindle. Bring the thread down into the thread guide until it clicks into place. Continue through the groove and this guide. Bring it under this guide, up over the take-up lever, and down through this final thread guide. Thread the eye of the needle and place the thread under the foot and to the left. Overlock has revolutionized the way a serger works with its exclusive Overlock thread delivery system. There is no need to manually adjust the tension settings for the Overlock stitch you want. Just select the type of stitch and set the stitch selector dial to A, B, C, or D and serge. The Evolve will automatically feed the correct amount of thread through the needles and loopers to form a quality stitch every time. Certain threads or fabrics require fine-tuning of the looper delivery system to perfect the stitch. Increase or decrease the delivery of the looper threads with the upper and lower looper thread fine-tuning screw. With the screwdriver found in the accessories, turn the screw clockwise to tighten the lower looper threads or turn it counterclockwise to loosen the looper threads. It's easy to change the length and width of a stitch on the Evolve. The stitch length dial is located here. The dial shows 2 stitch length ranges, each numbered from 1 for the shortest stitch to 4 for the longest stitch. One range is for standard serging, and the other is for narrow hemming, rolled edging, or narrow seaming. Simply turn the dial, aligning the desired setting with the indicator on the machine. This is the stitch width dial. It also displays 2 sets of numbers. The larger numbers at each end of the dial, 5.5 and 7.5 millimeters, indicate the stitch width when the left-hand needle is used. The smaller numbers, 3.0 and 5.0 millimeters, indicate the width when the right-hand needle is used. The M setting is for the rolled edge. Simply turn the dial, aligning the desired setting with the indicator on the machine. Adjusting the stitch width moves the upper cutting blade. It also moves the stitch fingers farther apart and closer together for complete fabric support with any stitch width. The Evolve is equipped with differential feed. This wonderful feature will enable you to sew on virtually any fabric. There are 2 feed dogs on a serger. When the differential feed lever is set on N for normal sewing, the front feed dog will feed the fabric at the same rate as the back feed dog. When the lever is set above N, the front feed dog will feed more fabric than the back feed dog, eliminating stretched or wavy seams on knits or bias cut fabrics. This setting also enables you to gather lightweight fabrics. When the lever is set below N, the front feed dog moves less than the back feed dog. For example, when the differential feed is set at 0.8, the front feed dog will feed 20% less fabric than the back feed dog, slightly stretching the fabric as it's being sewn. This prevents puckers on lightweight fabrics and enables you to add more stretch to active wear and create flowing lettuce leaf edges on knits or bias cut fabrics. There may be times when you want to serge without trimming the fabric edge, stitching over a fold, for instance. To disengage the upper cutting blade, turn this switch clockwise to the lock position. To engage the upper cutting blade, turn the switch counterclockwise. Discover the many uses of the express stitches. All stitches that are formed from the overlock threads or from the chain cover threads are considered express stitches. They consist of 4, 3, or 2 threads. Use these stitches decoratively or for construction. Let's begin with a 4-thread overlock stitch. The upper and lower loopers are threaded, as well as overlock needles O1 and O2. For 4-thread seaming, set the stitch selector to A. Set the stitch width dial to M. For most seaming, set the stitch length between 2 to 3. With the needle and looper threads under the foot, lower the presser foot. Hold the threads and sew a few stitches to be sure a chain is forming. Now you're ready to begin serging. Place the 2 fabric layers right sides together. There's no need to raise the presser foot to insert the fabric. Just place it at the tip of the foot and the extra long feed dogs will pull it in. When guiding the fabric through the machine, match the fabric edge to the seam guide markings on the front door. When using overlock needles O1 and stitch width setting M, the second mark is for a 5/8 inch seam allowance. When using only the right needle, O2, and the M width setting, use the third mark for a 5/8 inch seam allowance. When you begin sewing, the machine will be trimming away about 1/4 inch of excess seam allowance. Be careful not to push or pull the fabric. The evolve will feed it evenly without help. At the end of a seam, just sew off the fabric edge and continue serging to create a thread chain. Then cut the thread chain off with the thread cutter. That's a strong, durable seam. When sewing heavier or thicker fabrics, or if precise positioning is required, simply lift the presser foot to position the fabric before sewing. Maneuvering the fabric on a serger is a bit different than a conventional sewing machine because the stitches are formed around stitch fingers. There are many times you need to clear the thread from the stitch fingers. To clear the stitch fingers, raise the presser foot, turn the hand wheel forward to bring the needles to the highest position. Pull the threads gently from behind the foot. The stitches are now released from the stitch fingers. It's important to remember not to serge over pins. Chopping through pins will dull the blades pretty quickly. If you need to use pins, just remove each pin as it approaches the blades. A magnetic pin catcher placed right in front of the serger is a handy help. Another option is to put the pins in vertically to the left of the seam allowance. With this method, you can easily serge seams without the pins coming in contact with the blades or the needles. The 4-thread overlock stitch is the perfect choice for gathering on lightweight fabrics using differential feed. With the stitch selector set on A, set the differential feed on 2 and the stitch length to the longest setting of 4. Place a single layer of fabric at the toe of the foot and serge. an efficient way to create endless yards of ruffles. You have the option of removing either the left needle O1 or the right needle O2 to sew a 3-thread overlock stitch. This stitch has even greater stretch and less bulk for seaming knits, and it also has some interesting decorative applications. For a wide 3-thread stitch, the left needle O1 is used. To remove a needle, just snip the thread above the eye of the needle. Hold the needle with the needle insert tool and loosen the small needle holder screw. Lift the needle out of the way and tighten the screw so it doesn't vibrate loose. Let's use this wide 3-thread stitch for a rib trim neckline. Fold the strip of trim in half and place it against the right side of the neckline, matching all 3 cut edges. Stretch the trim as you serge. That's a truly professional look. Create beautiful decorative borders simply by using decorative threads in the upper and lower loopers. This is a terrific edge for any number of decorative applications. Place the specialty thread in the upper looper or in both loopers if the stitch needs to be reversible. The loopers have larger eyes to accommodate heavier threads. Use regular thread in the needles, matching the color of the specialty thread or of the fabric. Vary stitch width and length for a variety of effects. Sew slowly and carefully, and this decorative finish is easy to create. Serge without fabric to create a decorative braid that can be used for serger tassels or making specialty closures. The 3-thread narrow overlock stitch is the perfect stitch for seaming lightweight knits such as nylon tricot. Use the right needle, O2, for this stitch. To replace the needle, raise the needles by turning the hand wheel counterclockwise. Loosen the O2 needle screw and insert the needle flat side to the back using the needle insert tool. Insert the needle as far as it will go. Check the position in the needle height viewing area. Be sure to tighten the screw and thread the needle as usual. If you accidentally drop the needle into the machine, just pull out the needle drop drawer at the bottom of the evolve. The needle will be in the drawer. Set the stitch length at 3 and the stitch width to 3.0. Set the stitch selector to B. This delicate seam is great on lingerie. One of the most time-saving features on the Evolve is narrow hemming. It's easy to add this professional finish when working with light to medium weight fabrics. It's perfect for home decorating projects, craft items, and garment construction as well. Set the stitch selector to C. For maximum thread coverage, set the stitch length in the area marked rolled hem to 1 to 1.5. Set the stitch width to M. Now simply serge the edge of the fabric. A beautiful finished edge. The 3-thread rolled edge finish will produce an even narrower edge finish than the narrow hem. Simply change the stitch selector to D, and the narrow hem becomes a rolled edge. The fabric edge rolls around the stitch finger, and the upper looper thread wraps the fabric edge while the lower looper thread is nearly invisible on the back side. It is perfect when sewing delicate and lightweight fabrics. Seaming sheer fabrics has never been easier. Use a section of the rolled edge thread chain to make an instant belt loop or button loops. Another variation of the 3-thread overlock is the flatlock. This stitch is best suited for serging fabrics that do not ravel, such as interlock knits, tricot, sweatshirt fleece, or synthetic suede. The needle thread is carried below the fabric and to the cut edge. The lower looper thread rides along the cut edge of the fabric for stability. The edges pull open and flatten within the stitch for a flat joining seam. Use the right needle, O2. The threading path for the right needle is different. Place the cone of thread on the overlock needle 2 spool pin. Place the thread end through the telescopic thread guide directly above the spindle as usual. The thread will follow the upper looper threading channel. Snap the thread into this thread guide, down the slot in the faceplate, and through this guide. Bring the thread over here under this thread guide, up over this slot, and through this final guide. Thread the eye of the needle as usual. Set the stitch selector to D. Set the stitch length at 2 to 3 and the stitch width at 3.5. For a decorative flatlock tuck, fold the fabric wrong sides together and sew over the fold. Guide the fabric just to the inside of the throat plate edge, so the stitches will hang slightly over the fold edge. Then pull crosswise to flatten the stitches. Remember to flatlock with loop showing, fold the fabric wrong sides together. To flatlock with ladder showing, fold the fabric right sides together. Two-thread serging on the Evolve can be used for many applications. It's an excellent choice for overcasting edges because it's less bulky than a 3 or 4 thread stitch. It can also be used to create a flatlock seam. Create interesting variations when using decorative threads. Two-thread serging uses either the left or right overlock needle and the lower looper only. Thread the lower looper as usual. To thread the needle, place the cone of thread on overlock needle 1 spool pin. Place the thread end through the telescopic thread guide directly above the spindle as usual. Bring the thread through the top thread guide, down the upper looper threading path, and through this guide. Lock the machine and set the looper threader selector to U for upper looper threading. Pull about 18 inches of thread and put 1 inch of thread into the threading port. Press the looper threading lever. The thread will come out of the eye of the upper looper. Unlock the machine and pull the thread out of the tubular looper here. Bring the thread up and over the take-up lever and down into the last thread guide. Thread the eye of the needle. Turn the hand wheel forward to bring the upper looper to the lowest position. Rotate the subsidiary looper to the left to slip the end into the upper looper eye. Set the stitch selector to A, set the stitch length to 3 and the stitch width at 7.5. One of the most basic ways of using a serger is to finish fabric edges on facings, hems, and seams. It's easiest to overcast edges while the fabric pieces are flat before any seams are sewn. For finishing, guide the fabric so the blades just skim the fabric edge, trimming away the raveled threads before the stitches are sewn. Now the fabric sections are ready to be sewn on the sewing machine. That's a neat finish. To turn an outside corner, stitch along one edge to the corner. Take one stitch off the edge of the fabric, raise the needle to the highest position, clear the stitch fingers, and rotate the fabric and reposition it in front of the needle and continue serging. To turn an inside corner, align the fabric edge with the blade and stitch until the corner reaches the blade. Lower the needles, raise the presser foot, and pull the fabric into a straight line like this. A pleat will form in the corner. Continue serging. The two-thread stitch can also be used to create flatlock seams. It's often used as a decorative stitch because one side shows loops and the other side shows a ladder. Either can be used on the outside of a seam. For the loops to show on the right side, place the fabric layers wrong sides together, just the opposite of normal sewing. Sew the seam. Then pull crosswise on the stitches to pull the seam flat. If the ladder stitch is desired on the right side, place the right sides of the fabric together. A narrow two-thread flatlock stitch can be used to sew a nearly invisible blind hem. For a narrow two-thread stitch, use the right needle, O2. Place the cone of thread on overlock needle 2 spool pin. Place the thread end through the telescopic thread guide directly above the spindle. Bring the thread through the top thread guide, down the upper looper threading path, and through this guide. Lock the machine and set the looper threader selector to U for upper looper threading. Then thread the upper looper as usual. Press the looper threading lever and the thread will come out of the eye of the upper looper. Unlock the machine and pull the thread out of the tubular looper here. Bring the thread up and over the take-up lever and down into the last thread guide. Thread the eye of the needle as usual. Turn the hand wheel forward to bring the upper looper to the lowest position. Rotate the subsidiary looper to the left to slip the end into the upper looper eye. Set the stitch selector to B and set the stitch length to the longest setting of 4 and the stitch width to 3.5. Fold the hemline up and press it into place. Then fold the hem allowance back against the right side of the fabric, creating a soft fold in the garment with about 1/4 inch of hem allowance extending beyond the fold. Place the fold under the presser foot and stitch, allowing the needle to catch only a thread or two of fabric along the soft fold. The blades will trim the edge of the hem allowance and the stitches will encase the raw edge. Then simply fold the hem down to its normal position and press flat. Chain stitching looks like a conventional straight stitch on the top of the fabric and a chain stitch on the underside. The chain stitch has elasticity, unlike a straight stitch from a conventional sewing machine. It's used to stabilize seams in woven and knit fabrics. It can also be used to attach elastic. Top stitching this elastic waistband was easy with the chain stitch. Create an interesting effect by using it as a decorative stitch, like on the front of this caftan. The chain stitch is formed using 2 threads, a needle thread, and the chain looper thread. Needle position C1, C2, or C3 can be used. Choose the needle position that best suits the seam allowance. When guiding the fabric at the edge of the presser foot and using the C1 needle position, the seam allowance will be 5/8 of an inch. Needle position C2 will yield a 1/2 inch seam allowance and a C3 3/8 inch seam allowance. To set up the machine for a chain stitch, turn the cutting blade to the locked position. Disengage the upper looper by turning the upper looper positioning lever to the down position. Thread the chain looper and the C1 needle. Remove the blade cover and attach the sewing table. Set the stitch length to 3. Set the chain looper tension dial to chain stitch and the needle tension on 5. Lift the presser foot and place the fabric under the needle and begin sewing. This is a wonderful seam for garment construction. To be certain the tension is balanced on the chain stitch, the straight stitch on top should be even and the loops on the underside balanced. If the needle thread is too loose, adjust the dial to a higher number. If the needle thread is too tight, adjust the dial to a lower number. The chain stitch is simple to remove. Just pull here to remove the stitch. What a terrific stitch for fitting garments because it's so easy to remove. No need for basting stitches. Lend a professional finish to all of your projects by using the cover stitch. There are several cover stitches to choose from on the Evolve. Let's begin with the narrow cover stitch. The narrow cover stitch consists of 2 rows of straight stitching on the top side of the fabric and a loop stitch on the underside. It's great for hemming fine knits and woven fabrics, as well as applying knit bindings. For the narrow chain cover, use C2 and C3 for the right needle position, or use C1 and C2 for the left needle position. Both cover stitches are 3 millimeters wide. For this demonstration, we will be using C2 and C3 for the right narrow cover stitch. To set up the machine for the cover stitch, turn the cutting blade to the lock position. Disengage the upper looper by turning the upper looper positioning lever to the down position. Thread the chain looper and C2 and C3 needles. Unlock the machine. Then make sure the sewing table is in place. Set the stitch length to 3. Set the chain looper tension dial to cover stitch and the needle tension to 5. For a flat hem, press the hem up to the wrong side of the fabric. Mark the hem allowance on the right side of the fabric with the marking pen. Place the hem right side up under the presser foot, lining up the left needle with the marked hem allowance. Now sew the hem. To secure the threads, use a double-eyed needle to pull the thread tail into the stitch on the back, or use a seam sealant. What a terrific hem finish! This sample illustrates the perfect tension for the cover stitch. When the stitch is balanced, a straight stitch is on the top and forms even loops on the underside. When the needle thread is too loose, adjust the needle tension dial to a higher number. When the needle thread is too tight, adjust the dial to a lower number. A good choice when working with medium to heavyweight knit or woven fabrics is the wide cover stitch. It's easy to create an attractive top stitching using this stitch. Because the stitch is completely stretchable, it's perfect for top stitching on knits. For the wide cover stitch, thread the chain looper and C1 and C3 needles. Hemming in the round is the perfect technique for hemming ready-to-wear garments. To hem in the round, turn the hem up to the wrong side of the fabric. Press the hem and mark the hem allowance on the right side of the fabric with the marking pen. Place the hem right side up under the presser foot, lining up the left needle with the marked hem allowance. Begin sewing the hem. At the corner, stop the machine, raise the needles, and pivot the fabric like this. Take one stitch by hand and pivot the fabric again and continue stitching. At the end, overlap the stitch about ½ inch. To release the tension, raise the needles and the presser foot. Firmly pull the threads to the left, then trim the thread using the thread cutter. Pull the needle threads to the back and tie them off. What a professional looking hem! For a bold statement, the triple cover stitch is a great choice. The triple cover stitch has 3 lines of straight stitching on the top and a loop stitch on the underside. Because of its flexibility, it can be used when working with medium to heavyweight knits or woven fabrics. For a triple cover stitch, thread the chain looper and all 3 chain cover needles, C1, C2, and C3. You'll use the same setup and settings as with the wide cover stitch. Isn't that an attractive stitch? Combination expressive stitches are those composed of the overlock and cover chain stitch functions used in combination with one another. Combine different threads for endless possibilities. The 4-thread safety stitch is the perfect stitch for woven fabrics from fine to heavy weight. It consists of the 2-thread chain stitch and the 2-thread overlock stitch. This stitch is designed to seam and overlock the edges in one step, creating a garment industry standard safety stitch. The 4-thread safety stitch was used to construct this garment to stabilize the seams on bias cut fabrics. Thread the lower looper and the left overlock needle O1. Engage the subsidiary looper into the upper looper. You'll use a special threading path for the overlock needle for 2-thread sewing. Thread the chain looper and the left chain cover needle C1. Use a standard blade cover and engage the cutting blade. Set the stitch selector at A. Set the needle tension dial to 5 and the chain looper tension to chain stitch. Set the stitch width to 7.5 and the length to 3. Lift the presser foot and place the fabric under the needles and begin sewing. Needle position C1, C2, or C3 can be used. The difference will be the seam allowance. When guiding the fabric at the edge of the presser foot and using the C1 needle position, the seam allowance will be 5/8 of an inch. Needle position C2 will yield a 1/2 inch seam allowance and a C3 3/8 inch seam allowance. Choose the 5-thread safety stitch to stabilize seams on medium to heavyweight knits. It's also an excellent stitch when seaming medium to heavyweight woven fabrics. The 5-thread safety stitch consists of the 2-thread chain stitch and the 3-thread overlock stitch. It's designed to seam and overlock the edges in one step. Thread the upper looper, lower looper, and chain stitch looper. Thread the left overlock needle O1. Thread the left chain cover needle C1 for a 5/8 inch seam allowance. Use the standard blade cover and engage the cutting blade. Set the stitch selector at A. Set the needle tension dial to 5 and the chain looper tension to chain stitch. Set the stitch width at 7.5 and the length at 3. A tape sewing guide is built into the presser foot. It will aid in guiding narrow tape or ribbon into the stitching. The 5-thread safety stitch is great for stabilizing shoulder seams. Insert the tape through the slot and under the back of the presser foot like this. Place the fabric under the needles and stitch the tape into the seam. This 5-thread combination is wonderful for seaming on heirloom pieces. With the upper looper, lower looper, and chain stitch looper threaded, thread the right overlock needle, O2, and chain cover needle C3. Use the standard blade cover and engage the cutting blade. Set the stitch selector to D for rolled edge. Set stitch length in the area marked rolled hem to 1 to 1.5. Set the stitch width to M. Lift the presser foot and place the fabric under the needles and begin sewing. What a nice seam finish on this cotton batiste. Blend threads for endless combinations of functional and decorative sewing. A 6-thread stitch is a combination of a cover stitch and a 3-thread overlock, or a chain stitch with a 4-thread overlock. Use different combinations of needle positions, fabric, and thread to create interesting effects. Try this cover stitch and 3-thread overlock combination for a delicate heirloom finish for fine linens for the home. Thread the upper looper, lower looper, and the chain stitch looper. Thread the overlock needle O2 and the chain cover needles C2 and C3. Set the stitch selector to D for rolled edge setting. Set stitch length in the area marked rolled hem to 1 to 1.5. Set the stitch width to 7.5. Set the chain looper tension dial to cover stitch and the chain cover needle tension dial to 5. Lift the presser foot and place the fabric under the needles. Simply serge the edge of the fabric. What a beautiful finish! The combination of a 4-thread overlock and a chain stitch is the obvious choice for seaming medium to heavyweight knits like polar fleece or sweater knit. Thread the upper looper, lower looper, and chain stitch looper. Thread the left and right overlock needles O1 and O2 and the C3 chain stitch needle. Use the standard blade cover and engage the cutting blade. Set the stitch selector to A. Set stitch length to 3 and stitch width to 7.5. Lift the presser foot and place the fabric under the needles and begin sewing. What an absolutely beautiful seam. Blending 7 threads leads to even more decorative options in the gallery of serger stitches. The 7-thread stitch can be a combination of the triple cover hem stitch with the 3-thread overlock stitch, or a cover stitch with the 4-thread overlock. The triple cover stitch and 3-thread overlock stitch are a great combination when using decorative threads. Thread the upper and lower looper with designer 6 decorative thread. Thread the chain stitch looper, the overlock needle O2, and the chain cover needles C1, C2, and C3 with sulky rayon thread. Set the stitch selector to B. Set the stitch length to 3 and set the stitch width to 7.5. Set the chain looper tension dial to cover stitch and the chain cover needle tension dial to 5. Lift the presser foot and place the fabric under the needles and begin serging. Adjust the stitch length closer for a satin stitch look. For a cover stitch and a 4-thread overlock, thread the upper looper, lower looper, and chain stitch looper. Thread the overlock needles O1 and O2. Thread the chain cover needles C2 and C3. Set the stitch selector to A. Set stitch length to 3 and set the stitch width to 7.5. Set the chain looper tension dial to cover stitch and the chain cover needle tension dial to 5. Lift the presser foot and place the fabric under the needles and begin sewing. Combining all 8 threads on the Evolve makes a very strong, stretchable, and durable seam for heavyweight woven or knit fabrics and yields a perfect 5/8 inch seam. An excellent choice when seaming any type of heavy fabric. An 8-thread stitch consists of a triple cover stitch and a 4-thread overlock stitch. Thread the upper looper, lower looper, and chain looper. thread overlock needles O1 and O2. Thread the chain cover needles C1, C2, and C3. Use the standard blade cover and engage the cutting blade. Set the stitch selector to A. Set the stitch length to 3.5 and the stitch width to 7.5. Lift the presser foot and place the fabric under the needles and begin sewing the seam. It's the ideal seam for heavy woven like denim or heavy knits. Purchasing the Babylock Evolve Serger is an important investment. Here are some ways to keep it in top condition. The Babylock Evolve is equipped with a Schmetz ELX 705 needle system. Change needles often to ensure perfect stitch quality. Because of the cutting action, lint builds up rather quickly in and around the blades and loopers. Remove it frequently with the lint brush found with the accessories. The parts of the machine are made from a special material that requires no oiling. There are several optional accessories available for the Babylock Evolve Serger. They're available through your local Babylock retailer. Learn how to use all of the optional accessories with the aid of the optional workbook, also available through your local Babylock retailer.
Enjoy the many years of using your Evolve Serger and all the combinations of stitches it has to offer. If you have any questions, of course, first visit the retailer that you purchased your machine from. Or if you have comments or suggestions, visit us at our website, www.babylock.com, or write to us at Babylock USA, Education Department, P.O. Box 730, Fenton, Missouri 63026.